Like many artists, this year I've gotten really into sketchbooking, and I have this specific sketchbook where I've been doing things I've never really done before. I've been thinking of it as my fancy sketchbook, and I've been slowly filling it in with a mix of scrapbooking and art, really focusing on what is happening in my life and playing around with different materials and ideas and experimenting with what I can make in it, while being really satisfied with what the final result looks like. In some ways, it's almost like a visual journal of a kind. So I was looking at this page that was mostly untouched, and then I thought to myself, oh, I could do something for MerMAY. I immediately got a few ideas of things I wanted to try, gathered up my materials, and settled in to start creating. The main idea I had that I was excited to try out was using some of these patterned papers I have to make the shape of the mermaid tails. I started by cutting out the two patterns I was most interested in, then drew the general shape I was thinking of in reverse on the back, and decided to use the same pattern as the bikini top area of the mermaids. I don't know, I had been debating whether or not to just leave the mermaids topless, but I liked how the pattern looked, so I wanted to use more of it. I actually particularly liked the pink one because I felt like the white parts looked like mermaid tails already, even though they're supposed to be flowers, and I thought that was just like a cute little connection between the two. Once I had the pieces I wanted, I put them on the paper where I wanted them to be and used a pencil to loosely sketch the rest of the character. I will say I kind of wish I had looked at some other mermaid art before I got started to get inspired, because I felt like the poses were kind of stiff throughout most of this. I also think I was a little nervous because I was filming myself, and that was coming through in my sketches. Even if you can't see it, I was definitely feeling it. Once I had the sketch done, I went over the lines with ink, adding little details here and there, like the shine of her hair, more freckles, some last-minute attempts at stretch marks, and I decided to make all the mermaids have these bright eyes with black around the irises that I really liked. I think I'll have to borrow this for other mermaids in the future if I decide to draw them. I thought it looked kind of cool and otherworldly, and that's definitely how I like my mermaids. And it was while doing the inking that I realized I was feeling those nerves because my lines just felt a little unsteady, a little unsure. I especially felt it in the lack of flow to her hair, but that's okay. After I thought I was done inking, I glued down the paper pieces using this terrible cheap glue stick that I'm looking forward to never buying again once it runs out. It works okay for these really thin papers, but I've had some other things where it just struggles to hold them together. I did add a few more things with my pen, including redoing her stretch marks that got covered by her tail, some gills along her ribs, and just a little something on her tail. Then I pretty much repeated the process with the second mermaid. Since I made the first one a little chubby, I was thinking of trying to make the second one really thin, and I am personally a fan of the Itty Bitty Titty Committee, but as you'll see, this won't last, and that's just how things go sometimes. But that's also what the sketchbook is all about, and I still like how this mermaid came out as well. Well, merboy. Like I mentioned earlier, I tend to think of this sketchbook as my fancy sketchbook, and to be honest, I actually had kind of a hard time getting myself to start using it. I got it as a gift from my in-laws for Christmas, and it's something I would never have bought for myself because it's very obviously a bit expensive, and it is a more expensive item. Like, the first time I saw them stored in these fancy little boxes, my first reaction was being unsure if I would actually draw on it because it felt too luxurious for me. I'm used to buying things cheap, to working with what I have available to me because that's usually all I can afford. I already had 2 other journals from a different Christmas years before that I had barely touched because they also just felt too nice for me to use and fill with my silly little sketches. It was weird. I was like worried I would ruin them or that I wasn't good enough for these more ornate style sketchbooks, and it's just one small reflection of the emotional state I've been in for quite a few years now. I was just looking at the sketchbook, this gift from others who saw it and thought of me, and I was like, why do I always feel like I'm not good enough? I had gotten into a really unhealthy mindset of always thinking I needed to do more, that I needed to be better, and while aiming to grow and improve is of course good, I was just holding myself to this unreachable standard, one that wouldn't even allow me to use the gifts I was given without this little voice in my head judging me. And this wasn't like a sudden epiphany I had at that time. It was something I had been gradually realizing and thinking about, and I was trying to figure out like how to address it. But in this particular example, when I realized I was doing the same thing over just sketchbooks, that I was holding myself back for no reason, I decided I wouldn't let them stay blank. I enjoyed the rest of my holidays, got through New Year's, and inspired by all the sketchbook tours I was watching on YouTube, I used the calendar from the previous year to make my first spread, and I just absolutely loved it. I had never really done this kind of stuff before, except for like another old calendar collage I made because I wanted to keep the art and it's still sitting up on my wall over here. It was just, I don't know, it was just like a really nice change of pace. I really enjoyed adding some art to fill in the spaces and finding a way to keep the art I liked that I didn't really know what to do with, to experiment with adding interactive elements and ribbons and stickers. I've also found this to be a really good way to hold on to business cards because I just holding on to them is kind of boring and then they just take up space. But if I really want to hold on to it, I can just put it in a thing that I'm gonna keep forever and make it into art at the same time. It's a win-win. Anyway, like I said, I just had never thought about making something like this before, and since then, maximalism has essentially been the name of the game for this particular sketchbook. Returning back to the mermaids, I hadn't decided if I wanted to color them or not at the beginning, which was why I didn't do it before gluing the paper down, but I did eventually decide to color them. I did this thing I like to try sometimes where I pick 3 colored pencils and I use only those for coloring a character. I usually do it blindly, picking the colors at random, but this time I wanted to try to match the paper that was already part of the drawing, so I grabbed a pink, light brown, and a brown color for the first mermaid. Finally, I wanted to make her eyes stand out, so I used my yellow-green for coloring those in. For the merboy, I chose gray, green, and sky blue, and did the exact same thing, using orange to color his eyes, and then added some stickers from this huge book I have that I think was also a gift from my in-laws. I was a little unsure about adding these because I've used them in other parts of the sketchbook and sometimes they haven't stuck very well. I think it's probably because the paper of the book is very smooth. It does not have a lot of texture to it. I think this is also why the colored pencils aren't as bright on the paper as I would prefer them to be. There's just not enough bite to grab onto the material of the colored pencil. Would it be called lead? Color? I don't know what to call it. Either way, like the colored pencil part. Anyway, the point is that I tend to prefer paper that has a little bit more bite, and I think that this paper not having that texture was the reason that the stickers weren't sticking very well. But the stickers could also just be cheap. That could be another problem. Either way, I tried to give them an extra press down to hopefully keep them in place. And honestly, at this point, I was feeling a little bit worn out and probably should have taken a break, but I didn't. Instead, I did that practice I mentioned earlier where I picked 3 colored pencils at random and started drawing a pair of little gay mermen under the jellyfish. Again, the posing leaves something to be desired, but that's my own fault for pushing myself and not looking up references. That's fine. Since I didn't love the merman, I figured I needed to do something a little easier on my brain, so I added some lettering at the top and then decided to add a little drawing of 8-Foot Joe as a spur-of-the-moment decision, including getting his freaking name wrong, but don't worry, I will fix this later. For those who are wondering who the heck this overworked man is, he is a character from Tokyo Disney Halloween thing called Villain Recruiters, where each of the classic Disney villains have people working for them to recruit new minions. 8-Foot Joe is, well, Ursula's recruiter, and he is my favorite. He is so tired and gets scared whenever he hears Ursula's name because he knows he'll be given more work, and there is a lot of fan art of him with Ariel, both wholesome and silly fan art and also very dark and possessive fan art, and they're all very, very fun and silly, and I don't know, he's just like a weird little, maybe not little, he's just a weird guy. I like him a lot. Anyway, I wasn't really sure what to do for this last big empty space, and then I had an idea for another paper mermaid, so I worked on that for a while, this time using a yellow paper that had this pattern that was kind of similar to scales. Instead of drawing the shape on the back of the paper, this time I just sketched on top of it and erased the pencil marks after I cut it out, which was both easier and worked just fine. Although I could have been a little more careful when I was erasing, and I kind of bent the paper a little bit, but it's fine, nobody will notice. I actually really liked how this mermaid came out. Funnily enough, I felt like I had finally settled into this page and into drawing by this point, that my nerves had actually calmed down and let me get into the flow of things. I just kind of worked on filling in the space after that, and when I didn't feel like working on it anymore, I added the date to the mimic in the corner and called it quits, but I still wasn't feeling satisfied with it and came back to it the next day to add a few things off camera. I added some tiny mermaid figures, and I made this little teeny tiny picture of Ariel on a piece of scrap paper that I had from the cutting I had done the day before, and I used another scrap piece of paper to fix 8-Foot Joe's name. Yeah, I'm really glad I did this because I was feeling just okay about the page, but with these few additions, I'm much happier with how it looks, and it's just one more thing in this book that makes me happy to look at, and that's really what I want the sketchbook to be about. Although in hindsight, I feel a little silly for not doing a watercolor page for this because, like, it's mermaids, and watercolor would have been just like a really good match. But that's fine, maybe I'll do it next year. Either way, that is it. That is one more page filled out for my fancy sketchbook. If you're still here, thank you so much for sticking around, and please be sure to say hi in the comments and maybe hit the subscribe button. I'm currently working on this YouTube challenge, and I'll have a bunch of videos coming out over the next month, and it'll be really cool to find out which ones people like, so maybe stick around if you're interested in that. Thank you again for watching. I'm Asher. I hope you have a great day, week, whatever, and I hope to see you soon. Bye!